Good to see you. Oh, I think you're muted.
Okay, here we go.
Hi again. How are you?
Hi. It's so good to see you.
You too. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for welcoming me. Let me just move some stuff in the background so it's not quite so distracting. Uh,
No
Here we go. Okay.
problem. No problem. I'm super excited to dive in. I know some people told me that they were gonna have to catch the replay, so I don't know if anyone's joining us live, but I know a lot of people are excited um, to see the recording and learn from you. So
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I'm super excited to be here, and apparently stuff just wants to come through. So I'm um,
good.
I'm just so excited to be present with all of you, Carrie, and anyone else who wants to receive this magic. And um, yeah, I'm here. I'm here
Perfect. Do
as
you
I
want to start us off by just like telling us a little bit about you and what you do and what you
Yeah,
offer?
definitely. So I am a healer by calling and profession, healer and spiritual teacher, and I did not always this, your audience is not going to resonate with any of this, right? That's a joke. That's a joke. And kind of had to be all other paths had to be closed off before I was ready to say yes to that in a fully embodied truth um like heart surrendered way, right? Heart
That
surrendered way. And I think that's especially resonant for modern women who, so many of us grew up with like girl power and like we can be and do anything and strive and achieve. And, so many of our role models for that looked like, climbing the corporate ladder or being a lawyer or doctor, or teacher, or nurse, or something that was held in our culture as an established authority that people looked to with like reverence and relevance, right? And so the path of us, I believe that so many of us are born healers. We have an innate calling inside of us, but the path of healer, it doesn't exist in our culture the way that our calling
right.
wants to live that out.
That's so true.
How many of us, I don't know who's live, but how many of you resonate with that, right? Like I just want to let that land, right? Like I just want to
I
let that.
mean, I immediately thought of because like I studied psychology in college because it was the closest thing I could find to what
Hmm.
I wanted to do. But as I, learned more and more and went on, trips to visit therapists that were doing this work, I realized it wasn't it. It wasn't really what I wanted to do. It didn't resonate, you know? Just the methods that were being used and the setting of being in a small office and going through trauma and problems, ad nauseum. I was like, this isn't it, you know?
Yeah.
And there was no such thing as coaching back then. We're
Yeah.
talking 2001. It really
Yeah.
wasn't a thing. Yeah. And like you said, the healing path wasn't really available.
Right. And so I just want to speak to like, we cannot speak to this enough, especially those of us that feel called as like embodied female leaders. I mean, it resonates with men if you don't resonate as women either. Like it resonates with all of us, but the call of what our soul wants our profession as healer to look like, there are no external role models. And we have to become that. We have to sort of do this inner discovery of, oh my God, I have this calling to be a healer. But then there's this whole path of like spiritual and emotional initiation that we have to go in through that, like, what does that look like? Like, does it look like, right? Giving us permission to do, group work instead of, as you said, a small room with one client for 50 minutes, because that's all that insurance pays for you
Mm.
know?
Hmm.
And like so many of us, like I'm answering the call to scale my work by scaling like my relationship with clients, which is not done one-on-one, and you're feeling this
Yeah.
call as well.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
just feel so called to speak to anyone in this moment who's feeling like there's been this like janky fit. Like
Right.
there's, and we as women, I can only speak to the journey of women because that's really, I am a woman, I identify as female, cisgendered female, and most of my people in my world as healers that I help have those identifying factors. But for us as women, I find that we think that there's something wrong with us. We
Exactly.
think that the fact that it's janky and hard means that either we're not qualified, we're not capable, we're not trustworthy, we're not enough. Whatever enoughness or not enoughness, like
Right.
we're internalizing that the problem is us, not
Exactly.
the structure doesn't exist externally. The training programs, this is why we're going to have this call, like the training programs, the mystery schools where we used to receive our education as healers, they were destroyed, the temples were burned, the healers and leaders were killed. So these
Yep.
sacred ways of being that we related to our people, that we received our initiations to be able to lead in transformational containers and in ceremony and in healing work and in sacred feminine movement practices, those were outlawed. And
Right.
so if
Right.
you're feeling like the problem is you, it's not. It's
Right.
not you. And all of this has everything to do. I know we're kind of taking the long way around, but all of this has to do with sales and enrollment.
For
It has
sure.
everything to do with how we show up in our sales and enrollment calls. All of our shadow
With
patterns
you.
around.
It starts with you and your embodiment of, I really feel like as a healer, as you heal yourself, you automatically heal others. It's just like,
Automatically.
yeah, like without even necessarily being a healer, if you're healing yourself, you are raising the vibration of everyone you touch as well.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay, let's take a breath
I know,
because
I'm so excited.
that was a lot in preparation. So let's take a breath.
I love it.
I'm gonna put my hand on my heart and then I'm gonna release.
Mhm.
Sometimes I like to put one hand on my heart and one hand on my stomach. I'll just, model that for everybody.
That's what I'm
One hand
doing.
on my heart, one hand on my stomach. There you go.
Always good to take a breath.
And some of you might like to put both hands on your heart. That's totally fine. So the reason why this is important is because every time we go deep in this goes like use the breath, you breathe with your clients in your moment conversations. It allows our nervous system to settle down. It allows, all of us that are doing really sacred healing work, your client is probably coming to you from a state of stress.
Right.
And so if we can help them, settle down into their energy, feel more comfortable in their body, we're setting the stage for their authentic yes or no to be able to come forward without a lot of extra
I
gunk.
love that. I love that. I never thought about doing that in an enrollment call, of course,
So
within the coaching container, it's very effective. But yeah, to do that actually in the enrollment call, it's like you're starting your coaching right there, right? You're showing them what you do.
yes, we are absolutely starting our coaching in our enrollment calls because really enrollment calls are an experience. We're sharing who we are, but we're also sharing how we be.
Exactly.
So enrollment calls are these incredibly sacred ceremonies, if you want to use that word. Like we are women, we love to gather in sacred ceremony. Bring the essence of sacred ceremony to your enrollment calls.
Oh, I'm writing that down. That's so good. Yes. Yes, yes,
I'm going to
yes.
take a breath while Carrie writes that down. That's the first time I've ever said that. Bring the energy of sacred ceremony to your enrollment calls.
Beautiful.
So for anyone who's watching, as Carrie writes that down, I just want to how does that feel in your body?
Oh, it's so exciting. I feel tingly thinking about that. Instead of going into an enrollment call or a sales pitch with the pressure of, oh my God, I have to convince someone to do something. It's like, oh, we get to enter this space of sacred ceremony and share an experience together and connect like beyond linear time and logical realms, we get to have this connection. Oh, that's so much better.
Everybody, who resonates with that? Like what's coming up for you? Please put it in the comments. We'd love to see, because this is, this brainchild of Carey doing this interview with the two of us came from just a spontaneous conversation that the two of us had. And what wanted to come out of my mouth was conversations around sacred enrollment. And Carey was like, we need to share this. And I was like, actually, you're right.
Yes.
And I want you all to give yourself the experience of having an awakening.
Mm.
Like, allow this information to repattern your perspective and your understanding of how you think enrollment in sales should look and feel like.
Yes.
Breathe that in.
Yeah,
Because like,
this is already helping so much. So much. Because
because
I
let me
know,
tell y'all something.
yeah.
We are doing our sales and enrollment from the patriarchal perspective. Why
Right.
are we doing that way? Because that's all we know. Patriarchy meaning goal-oriented. There's nothing wrong with goal-oriented, but results-oriented. But
Right.
when you're dealing with someone who's coming into a healing container, that's really not a goal-oriented place.
Right.
Like, breathe that in.
Yeah.
When you are dealing with someone who's at the end of their rope, they're emotionally, spiritually exhausted. Do they need another place where they need to hit a target and achieve?
Or feel more pressure. Right.
And we as healers, so more about my biography. I know we kind of jumped in, but I'll weave my experience in through. So I've been a formal healer for the last 10 years, but I've been doing healing work since I was like a little girl. Cause like some of us were born with the calling, and I was one of those people. And I had like I was like the best friend therapist starting at like age 10. All my little girlfriends would come to me with their like friendship problems. Or like, I'm scared to talk to my mom and dad about blah, 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 blah. So I was doing the business development through, the business coaching programs and the packages of how to enroll high ticket clients and all these things. And, I was designing my enrollment conversations based on what I thought I should be
Yeah.
doing, based on the script of like, first I introduce the program, and then I talk about what it's going to be, and then oh, our favorite, overcoming objections. How many of you have been through training about overcoming objections?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Like, yeah, raise your
All of
hand and
it.
say I. Like, bullshit.
Uh,
Bullshit.
uh-huh.
That stuff is bullshit. If we have to overcome there's a difference between supporting someone when they're experiencing a hiccup or tension or contraction. That is sacred, that is important, and that is necessary. That is not about overcoming objections.
It's very much like, yeah, like everything you're saying is so true. Like we're taught this way of like of achieving an external outcome. Like we have to get the signature on the contract. We have to get them to click the button. We have
We
to.
need 4 clients in this program. I need 6 enrollments by the 31st of December. I need $5,000
Right?
by end of month close.
Instead of the feminine approach is more, let's have them feel something. Let's have them feel more powerful. Let's empower them to make a decision that's authentic and aligned for them. Let's have them, yeah. It's like a more like inner change, right? Inner shift or inner kind of approach.
Let's breathe that in. Put
Mm-hmm.
one hand on my heart, one hand on my stomach. Maybe 2 hands on your heart. I forget exactly what we called this, but I think it was something like soul aligned sales calls.
Selling with soul.
Selling with
Yeah.
soul. Are we starting to feel the shift?
Yes. Definitely.
We're moving from the goals that we think we should have, which I'm not going to call ego-based goals. There's nothing wrong with goals. I prefer the word target or even intention. My favorite way is I'm setting an intention. You know, my intention is to have
Yeah.
souls in this program. My desire, right? So many of you are, you know, Divine Feminine or Mama Gina students, right? She's all about desire. My desire is to have $5,000 this month. Right? When we feel into
Right.
that desire, right? I'm gonna embody the energy. Desire, when I say that, what comes up in your body? What gets activated when I say desire? My desire.
Well, I'm just gonna say I feel it in my pussy.
Yeah. Yes, that's who we are. That's what we're here, right? I mean, the pussy is the sacred portal, like literally, like it is the sacred portal through which the feminine brings life into the world. Like it is the most sacred part of our body. So yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even just being in that word, like let's
Right.
take a minute to be in our bodies. Like I desire financial well-being through my work in the world. Like, let's just start there, super macro.
Mm-hmm.
And like
Mm-hmm.
let's that move through our bodies. I desire financial well-being through my
Yeah.
work in the world.
Yes.
You know, I desire, and then we can bring it down from the macro into the specific. I desire $5,000 for this program in total sales. I desire.
Mm-hmm.
And so I must not have 5 grand in total for a program because I'm feeling a hitch. So this is why we want to be in desire, because being in desire is like, what do I desire to receive? And you find the numbers that feel congruent.
And that's a much different energy than need. Oh, I have to make this much money or I'm a failure.
How many
Right.
of you have felt that in the past?
Mhm.
Totally. You know, let me raise my hand up high. Absolutely.
Of course. Of course.
Right. I desire, you know, when we birth our programs through the world, we have to do it from a place of desire because that desire is where our intuition lies.
Mm-hmm.
Desire is connection with our soul. Desire is connection with, like, we're on divine assignment, everybody. If you
Mm-hmm.
are called to be a healer, we are on divine assignment. We are not on Alyssa assignment, Carey assignment, Susie assignment, Joellen. We
Desires
are
are
on
your
divine
destiny.
assignment.
Yeah. They pull you into alignment with your destiny. They're given for a
Absolutely.
reason,
We
right?
can't feel that resonance if we're in our head doing linear goals the way that, you know, patriarchy, not to diss too hard on the masculine, but the masculine is wired differently. And we live in a world that is by default set up for how the masculine functions consciously and unconsciously.
So well
And
said.
again, we think that we're the problem. We think that it's us, that we don't fit with those models, that it doesn't work for us, that we just need to work harder and sleep less and like peak
Wonderful.
performancing ourselves.
Right.
Like if you're always peak performancing, you're actually burning out your adrenal systems, especially if you're in a female body. That will shot your, yeah, it will completely misbalance your hormones. Peak
Absolutely.
performancing every once in a while, no problem with that. But ultimately, with women, it's our feminine practice. That is our path to peak performancing.
Yes. So true.
So all of these teachings that I have, not only am I on divine assignment, so many of why I teach what I teach now is my 10 years of struggle as a healer. My 10 years of struggle of thinking that I need to goal set the way that our culture tells us to goal set. 10 years of struggle of thinking that I need to do enrollment conversations according to a script that somebody else gave me. And if I just follow the script, the client will say yes. The best freedom I ever received was when I threw the damn script out.
That's right. That's right.
I
And
didn't
that's,
know what else to do.
yeah, because you
And
tried that other avenue, right?
now that I wasn't right, and then when I threw the damn script out, it allowed me to be present. It
Exactly.
allowed me to be present to work with my client. And because I could be present, I could use my superpowers. One of my superpowers, and if you're here, this is your superpower too, is being able to feel them.
And for them to be able to feel you.
Correct. So I
Mm.
could feel them. And if I could feel them, absolutely, they can feel me. So that script was creating an artificial wall that didn't even need to be there.
Yes.
And I was so scared and I was so crippled by imposter syndrome that I did not trust myself to be able to be in that conversation in a way that could potentially lead to a yes. How many of you resonate with that experience?
I
Like,
do. Yeah.
I felt like I needed a script because I did not trust that I
Mm.
could be in that conversation and it could lead to a yes. That's
Yeah.
just
No,
me
there's
navigating on my own, navigating with whatever felt congruent in the moment. Now, let me tell you something, healers. If you, so many of us know how to relate to our clients in session as a healer without having any training, right? How many of you just feel guided to say this, guided to move through this? Maybe you use a tool, but you use that tool, even if you were trained in that tool, you use that tool from a place of divine inspiration of this feels right now, right? Guess
exactly.
what? Your enrollment conversation, you already have the tools you need. Because the same tools that you use in your healing session with clients is exactly the same container and that sacred way of showing up and holding someone. It's the same thing. You're just having a different conversation when it's enrollment conversation than when it's a healing conversation.
Yeah. But it's even not that different, right?
It's
It's
not
actually more similar than we tend to
that.
think about it,
Yep.
right?
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Nailed
Yeah.
it. Good job, Carey. Nailed it.
Yeah, there's not that much differentiation. It's still helping them do what's right for them, what's best for them. And if that's a no, at least it's a clear, empowered no, and you help them
Correct.
make that decision.
Correct. Because we do not want a client that is not perfectly aligned, like perfectly aligned with our work. Please release them.
Mm,
Release them. And this is part of, so we've got like dueling wounds, if you will. I don't really, that's not quite the word. And as I talk it out, I'll find the right word, but we've got dueling like selves. So we've got the self that doesn't feel enough to be able to be present in this conversation and just respond with what feels organic and natural, like we do in client session, right? We feel organic and natural in client session, but like there's a hiccup. And it's because we think we're supposed to sell ourselves and get to the yes. So there's this pressure, right? And that gets all
right.
hiccupy. But
Mm.
then there's this also there's this other piece around um so many of us as healers have sticky points when someone is investing in us, particularly as the numbers get higher and higher. Like there's like self-worth issues that come up. There's um like, can I really deliver on these promises? And like there's this other thing in the coaching industry, like under promise and over deliver. Bullshit. Throw it out. Throw it out. Like, no. Under promise and over deliver, that's fundamentally incongruent to the energy of the container. Not to mention, there's no sanctity around that. Where is the sanctity in under promise and over deliver? That to me also feels like manipulation,
Interesting. Interesting. Say more
right?
about
Because we're trying to manipulate our clients to feel a certain way about us and our work. What the fuck?
that. Right. And I feel that, when the client makes an investment, their attention is going to be, in it relative to the investment they make. I mean, that's just what I've
So,
seen in my experience.
so this is a really good point. So to me, it's, there's a lot of things around healers and coaches like charge what you're worth, charge what you're worth. Okay, that's a
The
bullshit
other side.
conversation because
Yeah.
our worth is infinite.
Mm.
Our worth can never be distilled down to a dollar amount. Like, please,
So true, right?
please,
Yeah.
please, can we like disentangle that from our programming? Like
That is
coaching
like even
industry, charge
ridiculous
what
to
you're
think
worth.
about.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna blow your minds again.
You.
So your worth is infinite. Your value is infinite. Your the value that your work in the world is also infinite. It cannot be monetarily, and it shouldn't be monetarily defined in the sense that we're putting limits of either it's this or it's that or it's nothing.
Right.
We do live in a monetary based economy, so we'll get to that. So
Yep.
follow me on the journey and we'll get
Yep.
there, I promise, because we do live in a world where banks and credit cards and cash is a thing, and we need to pay our mortgages because we don't give the bank chickens to be able to pay our mortgages. So you were called to be a healer because that's your soul's assignment in this life's evolution. And yes, I think it's fundamentally important that we as healers can own our value in such a way that we have financially profitable healing practices, because we need to. If we're going to be full-time employed healers in this lifetime, we need to be able to have financially profitable, not just viable, but financially viable and profitable healing practices in order to do this work. It does not serve the world for us to be hobby healers and work someplace else to make the money and then heal on the side, unless that's what you feel called to do. If that's what's congruent for you, I bless you. That's beautiful. That's not what I feel called to do. I probably wouldn't be having this conversation if it's not what a number of you, Carey, what you feel called to do. We deserve to have this be our professional profession. And that means being able to earn a financially profitable, workable income. So that really does matter. And let's not tie our innate value and worth of our work and who we are to the numbers that it's going to take to create that.
That is just so liberating right there. So liberating. Like the two are not connected.
They
They're
should
just
not be connected. And this is where we as female healers, we get so tripped up
yeah. Yeah.
because
It
we
does not
conflate the
affect the
two.
other.
You get to have emotionally neutral energy towards your numbers.
Ah, yay.
Okay? You get to have emotionally neutral energy towards your numbers. That is a privilege and a necessity. It's actually a necessity. So, I'm gonna let everybody breathe that in. Take
Yep,
care
I'm
of space to
making
write that
notes
down.
here.
So we do need to have numbers in order to have a financially viable business, right? Like, and you can do
Yeah.
those numbers, like, right? Like, I need to have this much a month to be able to cover my lifestyle and my bills. And this is not necessarily about being the wealthiest healer on the block. This is just about understanding that there is structure sometimes that's important for us to pay attention to. And when we're in our feminine flow, like I'm someone who, like, I buck against structure. I hate structure, blah, blah, blah. So I've had to find ways to create structure that feel congruent for me. But again, that the structures that I create come back to the desires. Where is my desire? My desire is the direct plug to my intuition. My intuition is the direct plug to my divine connection. And my divine connection is where I receive my assignments.
Yep. 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 Yep.
And
It's
there's
dark.
so many places where that process gets tripped up by lack of self-trust or
Mm.
cultural programming or old wounds. So here's something that's also going to blow your mind as healers. I have found, particularly for female healers, it feels fundamentally incongruent to receive money for our work in the world. Like we want to and we desire, but there's a janky. There's a janky there. Here's why. Here's why. We are when you have the calling to be a healer, your soul is of service. That is your orientation to the world, is to be of service. So that is to be generous, that is to share, that is to, honor other people's needs, wants, and desires. Now, that's been taken to the very extreme, both by patriarchal world culture and us as women internalizing what we think a good woman is supposed to be. And so we've made that mean completely self-sacrificing, having no boundaries. But even if we had no self-sacrificing and boundaries, we would still have the orientation of service and helping others. It's how we're wired. So we get to do the work of,
Yeah.
not being self-sacrificing and not having boundaries. We get to have all that and we'll still be in our divine assignment. So We don't live in an economy anymore where we as healers live at the edge of the wood, grow our herbs, and people show up, and in exchange for a chicken, our dinner, our roof being thatched, we provide healing services. Like, we're not in that kind of economy right now. And for so many of us women healers, there's many pieces of that. So we feel sometimes more safe and comfortable in either just giving and giving completely, or in sort of a little bit of like a barter exchange, because that's what feels comfortable to our nervous systems.
Because
And
that was how it used to be back
when we were
in,
priestesses and healers in the temple, no one was
yeah.
turned away.
Mm,
When we were serving out of the temple, we also did not have to provide for ourselves because the temple took care of our housing, the temple took care of our clothing, they took care of our food, they took care of our, all of our material needs of being able to like be provided for, and our education. We lived in the temple, that we received our education there. So we weren't responsible for having to put the energy around creating a profitable structure. In exchange for the work that we gave to our community, we could just be of service. We didn't have to worry about what that exchange looked like.
wow, that resonates. That resonates.
So we could just be divine service.
Right, right. And
So
that's probably why so many of us hate this whole concept of marketing and selling. And like you said, putting a number on what we do.
it feels fundamentally incongruent to the flow of what we're used to normal is.
Right, right.
And how it was, supposed to be. Now we're in a new economy. The temples got destroyed, and so we're recreating them, right? One of the things that I've learned in my path is I'm here to create a mystery school. So many of us are called to create mystery schools because they got destroyed to preserve the sacred knowledge. So that's the incongruency we feel about why receiving money and marketing and enrollment and sales and receiving money, that's part of why it feels fundamentally incongruent to our mission as healers to be in these conversations.
Yeah, and I think partly too, like for me, it just feels like this information should be accessible to all women, right? And it's like it's been stolen from them, and now I'm asking them to pay me to help them reclaim it. And it almost does feel like not fair, right?
Right. Right. There's a jinkiness there. So once
Yeah.
again, it's not you. You are not the problem for why this feels off.
Mm,
It's not your imposter syndrome. I mean, maybe it is if we dig in a little bit, but it's not your imposter syndrome.
right.
It's, it's not your fear in the sense that you're, um, it's deeper. It's not just surface fear.
It's cultural
It.
context,
Right.
right?
We
Yeah.
live in a very different cultural context. That was such a good word. We live in a very different cultural context. And so, yes, we do need to update our beliefs. We do need to update our programming. We do need to update what this is why I teach this stuff now. It's like, okay, what was it then? How do we rewire our nervous systems for the current reality? Because we don't have the temples, we don't have these structures. We can recreate them, but it's going to take some time. What does it look like to have scholarship clients, right? Like, we can have scholarship clients, but when all your clients are scholarship, that doesn't actually benefit you or them, because for one, you're now not doing the profitability work that you need to be doing to be able to have you be taken care of, because the world is not served by all the healers being broke.
Right.
That's actually not like, we're not asking you to give and give and give. I don't believe that spirit wants us to just give and give and give and not make sure that we're taken care of. We now have to create the structures to take care of ourselves, because we can't just go in to a structure that exists and provides that for us right now.
Yeah, I mean, if we're constantly stressed about our bills, we're gonna all that energy is getting sucked away from what we're really supposed to be doing.
Correct. So we can rewire our feelings of safety. We can rewire our feelings of congruency. This is why this stuff feels so janky.
Mm,
So, and we haven't even started talking about the witch wounds when we were all burned and the temples were sacked. And if you grew herbs in your garden, she's a witch, you know? Like, I mean, there's epigenetic fear that does live in those of us that are female bodied and identified as healers, because there were like, you know, 1,000 years of burning and killings. And in the burning times in the 1500s, I just learned that there was something like some of the villages in France, so many women were killed that there were literally no women in the town anymore.
Really?
Like,
Wow. And
so to be a woman, it was almost like to be a woman was a witch. We have to eliminate her. And these cycles of fear and desperation, you know, we have it in our bones, but we also, when you have a power structure that is so desperate to impose control, they lose their connection to their soul light too.
yeah.
And so, yes, if you had bands of the masculine that were choosing to harm all of these women in the belief, the false belief of protecting the population or trying to establish control, this is also in a patterning of deep wounding. Even if that thought that it was righteous or right or correct. So yes, we were burned and we were pillaged and we were victimized, but they were already in that vibration
Mm,
in order to carry out these choices and these actions. So I just
right.
want to let that, like, patriarchal world culture, as Mama Gina says, does not benefit anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody. It
Yeah.
was superimposed to preserve power for a particular community of elite individuals that, oh, by the way, were just as fucking scared as the rest of the population.
Right.
Because
Right.
when you consciously seek to always have power and control over everyone else, who's running scared inside of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Breathe that in. So we as healers, we are doing really serious, profound work. We're doing really profound work healing ourselves from these ancestries of wounding. We have really profound work healing ourselves in light of the incongruency of how we have to interpret our work now versus the sacred containers that it was held in before we were all killed. And then we have all the wounding and all the programming and all the trauma. Like, we have a big job. Like, so if you're struggling, you're like, why haven't I figured out how to have a profitable business? Why am I not able to create the transformation? They told me if I invested in this $10,000 program, I would have a profitable business, and I don't. What the fuck? Like, we have millennia of desecration. Desecration, not just of us and our bodies, but desecration of how communities are supposed to be together and help one another.
Yeah.
Desecration of families, the sacredness of our families, desecration of thinking that there's no reciprocal relationship with the planet where we just take and we don't align with what the cycles of the planet needs in order to refresh and rejuvenate herself. So if you're feeling this profound emotional and spiritual exhaustion around the work that you're doing and the tasks that you have ahead, it's because it's heavy stuff. You are not the problem.
Right.
You never were the problem.
So
And
kind of
again,
what I'm hearing too is like from what you're saying is that when it comes to selling, when it comes to marketing your services or your products, doing it in a soulful way, the focus maybe shouldn't be on like the strategy or the template or the scripts or the business model as much as, because not that those aren't useful in some forms,
they can be, yeah.
but maybe the focus should be more on what's in alignment, for you? What is your intuition saying to you?
Do you resonate with this person you are speaking to? I'm so glad you took that because I can keep pontificating about witch wounds forever. So I'm so glad you brought it back to sales and marketing
No,
because
and
this is the focus of the call.
yeah,
But
fascinating.
you're absolutely right. Alignment. And it's not just about, is this person aligned for this program and getting to the yes? Are you aligned with this person? How do you conduct? So this is where you create your own script. You're going to write your own script. How do you know if you're aligned with this client? Let's get out of the excitement that someone signed up for an enrollment call and they're super excited to talk to you. How do you know that you're a yes for them? Write that down.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to write that down.
How do you know?
And for some of you, is it a tell in your body?
Right. And
And if you really want to go, hell yes, let's go for hell yes, right?
yeah. So maybe like coming up with some questions to ask them based on your own intuition and what lands for you, what you know in your body would make your program or your service successful for them, right?
Yes, let's take out how you know your program is going to be successful with them. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. We're
Yeah.
just going to say, how are you going to rework your questions in the enrollment conversation for it to feel like, how do you know that you're a yes for this client? So
Yeah.
some of you might have some digging work to do of like reflecting on your favorite clients. Who are your favorite clients? What do they have in common? What does it feel like to work with them? So for me, I can't work with someone in a one-on-one where I have to do what's called remedial education, meaning I have to get them up to a certain point before I can do my deepest, most powerful work with them. How many of you resonate with that?
Yeah.
So then being able to tell where is the threshold? Where are they? How do you identify where their threshold is for your work?
Mm.
Because
Okay.
it's
That's
your
really
job
good.
to be able to identify, are they in remedial where they need to do some catch-up work? Or how are you going to be able to tell that they're ready to jump in the deep? And spoiler alert, if they tell you that they're ready to jump in the deep, you can't always take that answer at face value, because their definition of what going into the deep is and what your requirements of what that is might not be the same thing.
Yep.
I invested in programs that I was fundamentally incongruent to be in because I was like, oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to do the work. And the coach was not spiritually, emotionally mature enough to like be like, oh, wait a minute, because I was coming from a place of trying to prove that I was one of those people who was willing to invest highly in herself. So I was actually investing from a place of ego, needing to prove that I was willing to do the thing, instead of a congruence of, it feels congruent for me to say yes to this program, and it feels congruent for me to say yes to this $10,000 investment.
Right. Right. Or I think, I can relate to that, or just thinking, you know what, this is going to fix me, or this is going to fill the void, right? This is like the missing piece of the puzzle, without really considering, do I have the time? Do I have the space? Do I have the ability to invest myself right now and really do this,
Does this program, like, do all the
Actually
tenets of
want
this program resonate with me?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to have coherence. Coherence is when two things resonate in the same way. That's when you have coherence. Another
Yeah.
word for coherence is alignment. And alignment has to work. It has to be aligned for the client, and it has to be aligned for you. And it's your job as the healer and as the coach and as the leader in that conversation you have to do the work to figure out what needs to happen for me to understand what the alignment click is.
Maybe you're, even as the leader, the one that brings up the objections, right?
Correct. Doesn't that turn it on its head?
Yeah.
Right?
Do
Right.
you
Do you
really
have
think
any
I have the
concerns?
power?
How powerful is it for you to be the one who asks the questions? What are your concerns?
Right.
Now you're in your power. You're not in your fear of like, oh my God, am I not going to have the right answer if they have an objection? And I don't know, is this going to be okay? Like,
Yeah.
you're the one who says, what are your concerns? So now we've established you're really excited. You feel really resonant about this, this, and this. What are your concerns? How many of you, like, how much freedom does that feel in this moment to have an open conversation with a potential client about what their concerns are and not because they're in fear
That
and not
feels
because you're in fear?
right. Right. That feels way better instead of hoping, oh, I hope they don't ask me, you know, how many hours a week it's going to take, or I hope they don't ask me such and such question or bring up such and such objection. You're like putting it all on the table, right? That's so much more
Right,
empowering.
right. So the ultimate
You win
goal,
them.
correct. So Carrie and I both agree that the ultimate goal of enrollment conversation is to get to, is it a hell yes for both people?
Yeah.
And so there's so many different patterns of how to get there. And each of you are going to have your own quote unquote enrollment conversation script. Each of you is going to have your own process there. So, it really is about, what does the hell yes look like for you? What do you need to know from this person to know whether or not you can ascertain and discern that they're a yes for you, that you're a yes for them, not even them a yes for you, but you're a yes for them. Right? So you might have to do some reflecting, you might have to do some journaling of like, what do I need to know? What do I need to
Right.
know about their history? What do I need to know about like programs that they've previously worked in? What do I need to know about healers that they've had past experiences with? Like,
Mm,
what information do I actually have to elicit for them to know that I can meet them where they're currently at right now versus needing remedial education, right? Can I meet them where they're at
yeah.
in a way where we can just jump in with the work that I really feel called to do with my clients right now?
I mean, this sounds less like an enrollment call, right? And more like a job interview because you're trying to see if they're the right fit
It
for
is
the
a job
position.
interview.
Yeah.
It
It's
is
flipping
totally, it's
power.
totally a job interview.
Yeah. I love it.
How empowering does that feel?
Yeah. It's like, are you an aligned fit for this container as the
Right.
product?
And not from like an ego perspective of like,
Oh,
I'm the healer and you're the, and I say that because
oh.
we've all experienced that. Like we've
Yeah. And
all
that
been in
wouldn't
moment
serve
conversations
either,
where,
right? To come from
there
that
was an
ego-based approach. But it's like, no, we want to make sure that we're inviting, like this is a sacred space. And we want to make sure we're inviting the right people in for the right reasons, you know, not
so
out of
let's
fear or
correct,
guilt or proving or performing, anything like that.
correct. So let's talk about so we've talked about us, and I feel like you all have enough to play with there. That we don't need to do any more work. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about the client now. So a client is booking an enrollment conversation for one reason, not to enroll in your program. They're booking an enrollment conversation because something, either in who you are, your essence of being, how you talk about the work, or the content that you're speaking about is resonating and speaking to them. So something is resonating with them. And that's why they're booking a call with you. Like, they do not know yet if you are the right fit for them. Some of them will say, oh, yeah, you're totally my person. Beautiful. That's wonderful. Still do your due diligence. Still do your due diligence on your side of asking them the questions you need to ask for you to be a hell yes. And now we're going to talk about how do you help them get to their clear yes or clear no.
This is beautiful.
So, my favorite way of doing this with a client is asking them, just starting the conversation and saying, "Hey, I'm so excited to talk to you. My first question is like, what made you feel drawn to me? What made you feel drawn to this program? What made you feel drawn to this work?"
Mm,
That's a super easy lead in. No pressure.
yeah.
Because here's the deal, if you're only talking about the program you want to enroll them in, you're actually missing the most important pieces of what's going to be relevant to them being able to be a congruent yes or a congruent no.
Absolutely.
And it's your job to be the guide to help them understand what exactly did they resonate with.
And what are they looking for
And
out
what
of
are
it?
they looking for? Because even though they might say, oh, yeah, I'm a hell yes to this program, when you do this due diligence, that might not be where their hell yes is. Their hell yes might look like a different program. Maybe not the one that you're currently selling. And maybe it doesn't mean that they're a hell no. Maybe they thought they were enrolling in a group program, but as you're digging, you're like, you really need to work with me privately. Like if you think that if you need all of these things, maybe we should talk about a one-on-one container. And then like let them have their response, maybe their objection, maybe their fear, but you're just in a conversation. Your job is not to sell them, and your job is actually not to enroll them. Your job in enrollment calls is not to enroll them. Your job is to help them find their clarity. Is to help them get to their clear yes or their clear no. It's to
Right.
help them understand where are they at on their journey in reference to where you are at. And either they're aligned with where you're at or they're not.
Yeah,
Use your authority as teachers and healers to be able to discern what this person actually needs is not going to be a fit for the container that they think they're signing up for.
exactly. And this feels so much better on my nervous system, I think, because it really makes the number irrelevant.
Yes,
Right?
preach, preach. It makes the number irrelevant. So much of what we have to do when I was in professional sales in corporate, which I was, one of the things that I was trying to teach my sales team is your marketing and sales conversation, it's an education. You're providing an education to your potential client so that they understand what the work is. How can they say yes or no if they don't understand what the work is?
Right. Right.
So, you know, some people, and here's where budget does matter. Some people are only financially available for bad language, but a lower tier investment. And what they really need is some deep trauma clearing, some ancestral patterning, blah, 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 blah. But all that their uh, budget boundaries, that's a word I liked, financial boundaries. Their
Mhm.
financial boundaries really is at your lowest tier monthly membership. That is perfectly okay. It is perfectly okay for you to enroll them and for them to say yes. And sometimes it can be really congruent for you as the healer to say, this is going to get you started. And at some point in your journey, you might call for deeper work periodically. Because part of our job in enrollment conversations is setting expectations of what they can expect to receive or not. Notice I didn't say what we can deliver or not,
Mm,
because so much of what they can receive ain't got nothing to do with us and what we provide. So much of what someone can receive is where their set point is at. We do not get to control their set point.
right. 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 Right.
Their
They
set
have
point
to
has
show up and they
nothing
have
to
to
do
be
with
ready.
us. So I had a teacher say, you're trying to be a gallon pouring into a Dixie cup. There you go.
That's perfect.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with having a Dixie cup client if they're in the right container in your program, in your practice.
Yeah.
You can have Dixie cup clients as long as you have a container that's for Dixie cup.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Don't
they
enroll
just
the
have
Dixie cup
to
client in your high level mastermind.
understand, right, that that is a different container, that, it's a different results. It's perhaps not going to be as fast as a transformation or as profound as a transformation they'll receive in the bigger program. It's just
I'm actually gonna push back on that a little bit.
sure.
I'm actually gonna push back on it might not be as profound as what they receive in a transformational program, because just because someone has Dixie cup capacity and it can only work in Dixie cup way does not mean that they're not going to receive profound transformation. because
True.
transformation is
Oh,
irrelevant to the container. Transformation is when you have congruency in the container, not big investment, big time, big mentoring. You
yeah.
receive transformation because you're working in coherence with what's there.
Right, right, right.
So they're actually going to receive, like, we don't actually know the transformation that they're going to receive from being in a smaller container, because if they only have X capacity to receive and they get that in sips throughout the year, what's to say that that's not as profound as a transformation as someone who digs in this deep?
Yeah, that's true.
So,
True.
so
If they're committed and invested in, in that capacity, where
right,
I guess what I was thinking of was when somebody joins one of those like lower ticket containers or whatever, and they disregard it or they don't pay attention to it.
right,
Ask them,
right.
"I'm doing
That's
this
totally
with this,"
different. That's totally
right?
different than working with the
You're like,
capacity that you
"Oh, it
have.
was only $35. I'll get to it later." You know what I
Right,
mean? And you
right.
never do.
And
So
this is a good point to ask someone, what is your history of investing in programs and how have you engaged?
I like that.
No one's ever given you permission to ask that outright. That would be considered rude, wouldn't it? Well, is it? For you to be able to ascertain what program is right for them to be with you in your healing practice?
And I think another reason we don't ask that is because we're like, well, if they want to give me money and, not do anything, great.
And that is us avoiding our leadership responsibility.
Yeah.
That is us being avoidant.
Yeah,
That is
definitely.
us being in the
What's
scarcity
the
and the fear that if we don't allow people to say yes to us, whether or not the fit is there, that there will not be people who are the right fit to come in.
totally.
And this is the number one thing that my mystery school is like working with healers on is like you have a responsibility to step up and be a leader in these containers, in these conversations. You gotta put on that crown. You gotta put that leadership mantle on. You are the leader. You are responsible for setting the container, setting the expectations, um, the
Yeah.
clarity. And that part of that means asking potentially awkward questions. But if you ask that question in, you can ask that question in a polite way, right? Sometimes we're overly polite, but you can ask that question in a polite way that doesn't feel really invasive.
Hmm.
And this might lead to an awakening on their end of like, wow, like I guess I typically do, my habit is they probably never reflected on their habits and never had a conversation with anybody about it. Like,
Right.
what are my buying habits of patterns? Do I buy the book and then never do it? I had an amazing, amazing client who was doing self-development work for like 7 years. And she was like reading all the personal help books and the self-help books. And she's like, I haven't figured out how to apply any of the stuff to my work. And I said, yeah, because you haven't like it's really hard to take a book and know how to apply it to your life because most people don't know how to determine the set point of their life and taking that work and seeing if there's a congruency there. And if there's not an immediate congruency, then they struggle. And so I said, you need a translator. You just need a teacher to take these principles and help you figure out how to implement them. It's not because you
Yep.
don't want to change. It's because being that translator is discombobulating your brain. And oh, by the way, that's normal. Like most people would struggle with that. Most people, it's more unique to have the skill to take, you know, here's one, 7 principles for making marriage work. Like it's harder to take the skills to figure out how to implement practices like this into your life than it
Right.
is to just be like, oh, I resonate with the truths of this story.
Because
Most of
again,
us need some sort of
those books and strategies are always based on what worked for somebody else, or maybe lots of somebody's, perhaps,
right,
in best case
right.
scenario, but they're not necessarily going to just, it's not a plug and play where you can just like
Mm-mm.
take it and automatically your business is now successful,
Right.
you know?
And she was feeling like there was something wrong with her. For 7 years, she was struggling. And I was like, no, you just need a guide. You just need a guide. And we could, and here's the deal. Like for me, I know in the first 5 minutes whether or not a client, like I do my due diligence because that's really important. But I don't, it's, you know, for me, it's always like I can just feel the click. Like I can just, it's an energy thing. And then we do the due diligence to see exactly what I do the due diligence with the client to create the package. So a huge, for the last 10 years, what I've been doing is not actually enrolling people in packages. It's making up the package based on the needs of the client that I'm talking to.
That's interesting.
I make them up on the fly.
When you say package, what do you mean?
It can be anything. So some clients are once a week clients because that's what feels good to them. Other clients are every other week or once a month because that's either what their financial boundaries. That's a word I really love to use. Some people might feel a constriction
I
around
like
financial boundaries, but something that's really important to me is, there's definitely pieces around, like I've had the experience of like putting high ticket programs on a credit card that never paid off, and then I was in mountains of credit card debt, and that really buried me, and that was really financially unsafe. And I didn't have the language around financial boundaries, and I didn't understand that I should have financial boundaries. So I didn't have financial boundaries and I overinvested. I also didn't know how to do the due diligence. And the teachers were more interested in enrolling me in their program than they were making sure that I was a congruent fit for the container.
that.
Because you can be a congruent fit for you can be a congruent fit for the work and the content and the teacher, but not the container under which they're offering it.
True.
So
Yeah.
that's also why I offer containers on the fly. And then I work with, you know, like sometimes I'll get a hit for, you know, for early on in my healing, when I threw out the enrollment scripts, I also threw out trying to enroll people at $3,000, $5,000, $7,000 packages because I had periodic success, but I could never build momentum and consistent enrollments in those in those packages. So I threw them out and I just basically started saying, anybody who feels stuck in their life, I'm a good fit for, and by the way, it's $100 an hour, which is per session. Like a session is 1 hour and it's $100 an hour. And it was the best thing that I ever did because it removed all the barriers to any of the enrollment. So most people have $100 to spend on professional help and support, that's an out-of-pocket therapy session is $100 an hour. So that's also where I got that. I was like, this is what it costs. And it led me to working with way more people than I ever would have worked with if I tried to hold out and wait for the $5,000 client, which is also against the business wisdom that we're taught in the
Right.
world. That also is, hold out for the $5,000 client because you got to have how many $100 clients? Not only did I have money coming in more consistently, I was able to enroll more people. So much of us, I'm 10 years in and I only feel like I'm talking to the right clients now. Like I'm having a total up level of the kind of client. I'm now starting to I'm creating a package for the first time in 7 years. And my current package is about, and I'm not trying to sell anybody here, I'm just using my work as an example of how this flows for us. So I have a training program specifically for healers about all the stuff we didn't get educated on, based on my own hiccuping in the last 10 years as a healer. And it's the first time that I'm creating a program with actual content that I have a high ticket price on, that I'm consciously enrolling people at that level because I so when I was working with $100 people, I was looking at what are the commonalities between the people who keep winding up in my lap? What are those commonalities? Who winds up and they wound up typically being, and my marketing was super simple. It was like, if you're stuck, if you're stressed, if you're overwhelmed and you don't know what to do, come talk to me. I can help you. That was it. That was my only
Wow.
message. I didn't try to oversell it. I didn't try to overcomplicate it. I was like, if you're stuck, I can help. And I didn't promise any results because I didn't know what the results were going to be. Right?
Interesting.
So that flies in the face of all the business training that I've paid $10,000 to receive. Like, oh,
Up.
don't get the results, sell them on what they can get. Like, that didn't work for where I was at in my business evolution. It was incongruent and I couldn't sell people. You know why people were enrolling? Because it was a bunch of hot air.
Right.
And so the clients that kept coming to me were people who appeared to be your average normal human, kind of working a job and living their lives, but their lives were burning to the ground, their career was burning to the ground, maybe their relationship was burning to the ground, oftentimes their money was burning to the ground, so they also could only afford, their financial boundary was $100 a session.
Yeah.
And when I sat, after 3 years of working with these clients, I sat down and I basically was like, Spirit, what the fuck do these people have in common? Because I can't figure it out. And I got the intuitive hit. And it was because when we would be in session, they would take to the work, the spiritual work I was doing, healing work, that they would take to a fish to water. They would take to the work like a fish to water. And at that point, I didn't have the ability to enroll with the level of clarity that we're teaching you all how to do. All I knew was to trust my gut of like, oh, they have a problem I can solve, click. That first 5 minutes, I just knew I could. I don't know. I guess it was soul to soul coherence. I don't have any reason logically as to why I just knew I could work with them other than I just felt a coherence. I felt a resonance and they had a problem I knew I could solve. And for me, I always trust those clicks, and I don't bother to do deeper due diligence because I know that if I just trust it, I'll be shown why later. But sometimes you do need to do that due diligence. So here's how to do the due diligence, right? We're telling you how to do the due diligence. Because with my Healers Training Circle clients, which is the program that I'm doing for my mystery school right now, it's really important that I do the due diligence, and we'll get to that in a second. So my $100 clients, so I was like, God, what do these people have in common? What the hell? And Spirit goes, these are the masters who've forgotten who they are.
Powerful.
These are the masters who've forgotten who they are. That is not your average plebeian client who's just working a job and walking around on the surface of this planet.
No.
That is a very special soul.
Yeah.
And I was like, no wonder why they're drawn to me. Because I got a reading done by a hand analysis. It's called scientific hand analysis psychic when I was 23. Where she did a hand reading. And she basically told me that I was a spiritual teacher, leader to leaders, healer to healers. You don't know what to do with that when you're 23.
Yeah.
You don't do anything with that when you're 23. You're like, okay, that's great, fabulous. I'm gonna go like work in corporate because I don't know what else to do with my life.
Right.
By the way, Spirit only gave me 9 months in that corporate job, eliminated my position, and was like, you're gonna go on this path as a professional healer now. Basically, that's my story. Basically, Spirit removed every other option except this path. That was the only path that felt congruent, was starting my own business and doing the healing work. And I was like, no one is going to take a 23-year-old life coach seriously. My mentor at the time was like, you're really taking to this personal development and healing work like a fish to water. You should do it. And I was like, no one is going to take a new college grad seriously because I wouldn't. Like, I would never
had any life experience. Right.
And she was 65 and retired, and she had worked in human resources and corporate for like her entire career. So, she had 30 years in that. And so she's like, well, I take you seriously. And I was like, okay, like you have a point. Because, this woman was nobody's fool and could recognize value when she saw it. And I trusted that. I trusted that in her. I trusted her belief in what the potential if she saw in me, but I didn't trust myself.
And that's the journey.
How many of you can resonate with that?
Hell yes.
And I know we're going long, but I promise this is totally worth it. Like, this is worth it. It's so important. We're going to close a lot of these tabs. I promise. We opened a lot of tabs of stuff we're going to talk to. I promise we will close all of them. I guess I have been tracking them in my head, even though it might not look like it through the snake of the evolution of the conversation of how we go. But this is how I teach. So y'all can follow along. You're smart, capable people. I trust you. I did not trust myself to be able to be a healer that could lead transformational journeys for people. I did not trust that my innate skills and gifts were enough to be able to meet the needs of the people who showed up. I did not trust that I could lead because I felt so young and inexperienced. Here's the kicker. I could lead. I was totally in session. I was magic. How
Right.
many of you resonate with that? How many of you in session are magic? Like, you're not an ego to own that. I know you're magic. That's why you're here. That's why you're called to do this work. You are magic. Yes, you are magic. Please, for the
But
love of the holy.
I
Own
know
it.
for I know for me, this is just speaking for myself, but I think yes, I had those qualities at 23 and my ego would have gotten in my way. And it did get in my way.
Oh, mine did too.
Yeah. And I had to go on that journey of realizing that I'm not my ego and that, yeah, I mean, that's a whole journey back home to who you really are in your authentic self, in your spirit, in your soul, that a 23-year-old doesn't really have the wisdom or experience to.
No, and there's no container, right? Again, the mystery schools don't exist. So there's no
Yeah,
container for us to get that feedback of like, this is what you're experiencing, and this is why, and this is how, and let's lead you through that in a way that doesn't like burn you out and drive you crazy. And the only way that you can like honor your calling as a healer is when like you're whatever middle-aged is, like like
right,
whatever that means in today's culture, so yeah, and sometimes every person's journey of what that ego experience is. For me, I didn't trust myself. I didn't believe that I didn't trust myself, so I didn't believe that I was worthy of being trusted
right.
by people putting their faith in me to guide them on a healing journey or transformational journey. Like, first of all, I have a side note to that, but how many of you can resonate with that? Like,
Yeah.
how many of you have that? And this is why I say in the last 10 years, not anymore, but I suffered from crippling imposter syndrome. How many of you believe that you don't trust yourself enough to be worthy of being trusted?
Yeah, definitely. And I think playing small and self-doubt are also they're ego-based,
Hmm.
right? Just
Right.
as being too egomaniacal is ego-based. Like it's all in the same spectrum.
Correct. Correct. You can go all the way to the overinflated to cover for that insecurity, or you can get buried in the fear and insecurity. And it's both ego based. Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. And so I think I try to tell my story so that y'all don't feel like there's something wrong with you of why
Right.
you struggle like this. There's nothing wrong with you. We've just internalized all kinds of weird programming. We've made up stories that may or may not be true. We definitely have histories of oppression and trauma and fear and, burnings for doing this kind of work in the world. All of that is real, which is why it feels so hard to feel like it's like the timing belt can't catch. We're trying to turn the engine on in our car and we maybe can go 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour. Maybe we get a good stretch where we go 50, 60, but then it just clinks out. And we're like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? And this is why I created a program for training healers. Again, that's another conversation for another time. But um, it is a bumpy path because there's so much that comes up for us as healers just offering to get to the point where we're offering our services and enrolling people. Like,
Yeah.
our stuff doesn't necessarily come up in session guiding and leading somebody. Our stuff comes up with everything that happens between I have a calling to lead somebody and getting somebody on the table or getting somebody in our program to lead them. That's where all the janky stuff happens.
That's where the
You
witch
know,
shows up and
the money
all of that.
fears, our personal insecurities. So I didn't trust myself to be capable of being trusted by other people, but I'm so lucky that I had clients that just, you know, I do believe in law of attraction. It's really important that we work with that, but sometimes congruency and resonance is still there underneath our fear. Because I had clients that were really that my vibrational set point of imposter syndrome and fear did not make them feel afraid. They said, "Yes, you're my person. I want to learn from you. And
Mm,
I'm going to give you the money for that. What does your program cost?
right.
They're like, I'm going to
Right.
give you the money."
I think a lot
So
of times we hear that we shouldn't feel afraid, that we're not, if we're scared, then we're not high vibration enough, right? and
that
like,
if we can't alchemize our fear that no one's going to be able to enroll. And I want to say that your fear, yes, we do want to master that fear. That fear lives here, but the congruency of your soul is underneath that.
yeah, and
And the
courage,
congruency of
being
your
in that
soul,
and doing
it
it
doesn't
anyway.
leave, no matter what's on the surface.
Yeah,
The congruency of your soul is a steady vibration. And your
yeah,
soul aligned clients will be able to feel that. And
right.
sometimes, yes, they will have to have, it'll have to be, you know, their confidence in you versus you trying to neutralize your fears. Like sometimes you'll have seasons of that. And I want to make it be okay that you can be in seasons of that. The first 5 years of my practice, that was my season.
Yeah. And sometimes
So
you just have to go through it.
correct. That's part of
That's
the
how you alchemize it.
initiation of
Yeah.
being a healer. Because for those of us that feel calling to be a healer, excuse me, this is a lifelong thing. It's gonna
Right.
last your whole life long.
Right.
So like you're gonna have seasons of when you're in fear. You're gonna have seasons when you're in expansion and growth. You're gonna have seasons when you're in contraction. You're gonna have seasons when you're in reinvention. And different like sticky stuff to be healed is gonna come up dependent on the season that you're in. So again, on my journey, so the masters, this is a masters who've forgotten who they are. So I was like, holy shit, that psychic was right. Like
Yeah.
this is winding up in my practice. And I didn't do anything for like 4 years with that. I just kind of sat with that and consciously acknowledged that that was a thing. I did not feel called to create a program about it. I did not feel called to create a program. Because I also didn't feel called, here's the deal, back to enrollment conversations. I didn't feel called to do enrollments about it. So if I don't feel called to do enrollments about it, then I shouldn't be creating a program about it.
Right. Right.
I literally sat on this information for 3 years, still taking my $100 clients because I didn't have a better idea. And like, this was how I could serve. This was how I was supposed to serve in that moment. And in taking those $100 clients, because there was nothing on the line for me in serving them, because it was $100 per session. So we just had sessions however often they wanted. I didn't try to convince them. We just worked with like, do you want every month? Do you want every other week? Do you want once a week? Like, what do you want? And that's why I could my container was super easy to invent, like,
Right.
and early on in my career, I would invent containers being like, well, how often do you want to talk? Every other week. Okay. 500 or 1,000? What number feels better? Oh, 500. Okay. Then that's the cost per month. And then 1,000 would have been if they wanted sessions every week, cost per month. Like that's how I would make up containers on the fly. I literally would say a frame of boundary of financial investment versus it costs $1,200 and then deal with whatever. Because I'm giving them something to react to. That's a spectrum.
Yeah. So it's
How
kind
often you want to talk to me? Every week, every other week, every other week. Great. 5,000, 500 or 1,000.
Mhm.
Oh, 1,000. Oh, look, you can have me more often because that's what felt congruent in the moment.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was early on. But like I said, I wasn't able to consistently do that, which is why I backed off and did $100 sessions. Those were very magical clients. They just, they were magical. So, I just gave myself permission to keep serving these clients in this way. And I believe as healers, it's better we have the client than try to hold out for the right investment.
Yeah, because it's giving us an opportunity to practice our craft, to get better, to get more experience,
To
be
build that self-trust.
better.
In all of those years, I built my self-trust of like, I really understand the journey of these particular clients. I really understand the journey of the masters who've forgotten who they are. Like, I really have deep authority to speak to that journey and speak to that experience.
Mm.
And oh, by the way, I can't enroll the masters who've forgotten who they are in a program to heal them of that because they don't know who they are. So they're not going to be resonating with a program called Return. Like, that is not going to resonate.
Yeah,
Which is why, marketing in those early years was like, if you're stuck, I can help you.
right.
So, I never would have learned who my true client was had I not deprogrammed myself from all the business training and done what felt congruent. So now fast forward, like, so I did that for like 4 years doing nothing. And then at the end of that time, I just started downloading what is now Healers Training Circle program. I just started getting all this curriculum and started putting that together in a training program for healers based on all the stuff we don't get trained in. Things like boundaries, conscious conversation, leadership, all the stuff we've been talking about is what I train healers in. Anyway, and all of a sudden I had an awareness over the past few weeks, and I realized I'm still working with the same client that was my $100 client at a different place in their life cycle. Because I was getting them when they were in tragedy and when they were in trauma. And now when I'm training them, like this program is for established healers and up-leveling their skill sets, that's a totally different era on that person's journey. They're not in tragedy. They're not in loss. They're not in trauma. They might have traumas that need to get healed, but they're not, their whole life isn't burning to the ground. And so finally I was like, oh my God, I'm actually working with the kind of client I've always been designed to work with, in a place where they can receive my gallon into the Dixie cup, wherever I put the Dixie cup. Well, they're now a gallon. They're not a Dixie cup.
Right.
They're now in a place where they're a gallon.
Yeah, they've stepped into their purpose. It can
pour gallon to gallon versus me having to, work with the Dixie cup capacity, which doesn't work for me. I've learned as a healer, I can only do like 1, maybe 2 heavy trauma healing clients in my whole practice. I can only have 1, maybe 2, because of the heaviness and the intensity and the way in which I hold that work as a practitioner. I'm a practitioner. I'm extremely thorough. So nothing goes unacknowledged. And when you have that level of thoroughness, it is emotionally and spiritually exhausting because of all the things I have to pay attention to. Like, there's a lot of tabs I've got open in this conversation. When I've got a trauma healing client, there's 1,000 tabs.
Right.
Like, where's their history? Where's their ancestry? Where's their inner child in this moment? Like, where's the trigger? Where's their nervous system? Like, there's a lot. Like, am I overexposing them to something that doesn't serve their nervous system? It takes a lot of attunement. And that level of attunement burns me out.
Yeah.
So that's when I knew I was ready to release that client and work with something new, because again, that doesn't serve the season that I'm in my evolution as a healer, and in like the season of life. I'm a mom now. Before, I wasn't a mom. So all my attunement energy could go to that. Whereas like all my attunement energy right now goes to my 2-year-olds. Like that requires a big level of it. Parenting requires all the attunement you have. And, I need to not be burning that out, needing to be, that client requires a particular level of attunement that I cannot provide for right now.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're coming to an end. So we talked about you knowing what your yes is for a client. We talked about how to ascertain whether or not that client is a yes for you and the work, and those are 2 separate things. There's you as the teacher, because someone can totally resonate with you. And this is when I love the freedom of, like, if you feel inspired to make up a container that you've never sold before because you just feel a real affinity with this person, you feel a congruency with them, and you sense that there's a really good congruency. Like, here's the deal. For me, if I feel a congruency with someone, they probably feel it with me too.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily need to overfunction to figure out their congruency.
Right.
With me. I can usually just sort of trust that. So that's when I go make up programs on the fly for us to work together. But when you're enrolling for a program, it's really important for you to ascertain, are they a fit for the program?
Right.
Because if they're not a fit for the program, they're not going to get whatever value or investment. Oh, yes, this is what I wanted to say about value. Value is like beauty. It lies in the eyes of the beholder. So this is why we have to decouple our value, charge what you're worth, and the value of this program. Fuck that. Your value is infinite. And at the same time, value is in the eyes of the beholder. So if you value that program at $500, that does not mean that your potential enrollee will value that at $500.
Right. It's going to depend on their financial boundaries, right?
Correct, which you have no
Yeah.
control over. And so
Right.
trying to get them to value that at $500, like, stop. Stop it. Oh, they'll pay the money if they really value it. No. They'll pay the money if they feel aligned and resonant.
Mm.
You know, we've been trained to use this word, oh, they'll pay the money if they value it. No, I mean, yes, and they'll pay the money because that they understand, they feel a congruency between what they're paying, what they're receiving, the container, and you. And the word for all of that is alignment. Coming back to the thing that Carey's been saying this whole time, the word for that is alignment. Because they feel aligned with with what they're paying, with what they're receiving. And they feel
Mm-hmm.
aligned with you as the leader
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
be with them in that experience. So yes, enrolling for a program is very different. I just discovered this by talking this out. Enrolling for a program is very different than just enrolling someone one-on-one. Because the one-on-one person, you have the freedom to invent the container on the fly based on the resonance that the two of you have and the needs and the financial boundaries that they have. Because if I feel resonant with a client, I would so much rather just create a program on the fly so we can work together. Money at that point is a function that allows us to work together. And it's not actually about the cash exchange. That's why I loved the $100 an hour clients, because it was the money that just allowed the relationship to happen. I wasn't trying to like make money off the client, which is a sticky energy. But when you are enrolling for a program, you have to check what resonates with you about this program. Does the investment work for you, or is it a stretch? Let's just talk about that, right? Do you like how often we talk about the content? Does that work for you? What's your history of working with content? Do you actually engage with it when you receive it, or do you just let it pile up to, hopefully get back to it later? And do you actually ever get back to it later? Do you resonate with me as the teacher and me in this program? Because if you resonate with me as the teacher, but now that I'm talking to you about what resonates with you in this program, we're finding some sticky stuff. Like maybe this isn't your program. Maybe you need to work with me in a different capacity. Like maybe my membership program versus my mastermind program. Like membership
Yeah.
where you just passively receive stuff versus mastermind, we're on active calls with Q&A.
Right.
So like we do have to check for fit. Like this is what checking for fit means.
Right.
I
Right.
promised we'd bring it all home.
Thank you.
I am very long-winded and it's my style. I'm very, very thorough. So
And you did. You tied it all up and brought it home. So thank you.
if
You're
you all stayed with
fountain of
us,
wisdom.
bless you.
You are.
1 hour call turned into 90 minutes. I bless all of you. Thank you. I receive, I hope it was valuable to all of you who stayed with us for this long. Um, I can't not teach. Like, you know,
Yeah.
especially when I feel like, and those of you that many of you might resonate with this too. We know that we have transformational information that's going to cause transformation and change in the lives of the people that we touch. And so a note about creating containers, make sure that your container is congruent with the level of style of how you teach, how you heal, and how you flow. Do not try to make a container smaller in order to fit someone's financial boundaries, and you think that by moving them through the content faster, they'll still get the transformation.
I know I tried that. Didn't work. We talked about
This is part of us owning our authority as teachers and leaders, being in that leadership role. of like, I understood when I first created Healers Training Circle 3 years ago, I thought it was going to be a 6-month program because I was just going to bang, bang, bang through the information. And then I realized it had to be a year-long mastermind and there was no other way around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so so speaking of when I'm enrolling clients right now, the biggest thing I'm checking for is the emotional, when I write down my manifestation list of the kind of clients I want, one of the first things I wrote down is someone who wants to engage in this kind of content for an entire year. They want to engage in this really deep level for the entire 12 months around the sun. Because that's a very specific kind of client that has nothing to do with the financial investment. But here's the deal. When you have someone who's willing to commit to the emotional and spiritual commitment of doing that deep work for 12 months, guess what? They're probably willing to have a high level of investment in that. So
Right.
this is the congruency between container and money versus this is the value of the program.
Yeah. Very
Let's
different.
have the price be congruent with what the work really is and what our intention with the work is.
Right. Absolutely. I feel like the theme words, the words of the day are alignment and congruency.
And
Kind
again, congruency comes, where's our feminine practice in our bodies? Where are our desires, right? We desire to earn $5,000 a month. Okay, well, what are the different programs that we feel called to create that could bring that? And I say could, not will, because we have to be in the exploration. You know, for the first 10 years of my practice, I only had like 4 $5,000 months.
Yeah.
Because I was called on a journey to do something totally different. Let
Yeah.
that be okay. I
Yeah.
would not be able to create this powerful mastermind program that I have if I had not struggled for the last 10 years.
Right. Right.
You know, and that was my divine assignment. I didn't understand it. I thought the problem was me. Why can't I just slap a $5,000 program and enroll people? What's wrong with me? Well, Spirit had a different plan. And I had
Yeah.
to get my ego out of it, stop trying to enroll high ticket programs and just serve at almost the most basic level of service.
Nice.
So, you know,
Beautiful.
where you are at in your journey is okay.
It's perfect.
Okay, so I love all of you. You're amazing. I hope you got something. Please type in the chat that, like, you know, please share your notes. I'm big on like people who can't watch the whole recording. Feel free to use the chat underneath this to be where you like speak the line, like pick 2 or 3 points that really resonated with you. Here's my call to action. 2 or 3 points that really resonated and put them in the chat because not everybody has an hour and a half to watch the whole thing. But that doesn't mean that those of you who put the points can't share that with the sisters in the community.
Beautiful.
You know,
Yeah.
so put the 2 or
Great
3
tip.
points that really resonated most strongly with you. And, you know, I know Carey would love to see that. I'm available for any DMs. You know, I love to talk about this stuff. So, you know, if anything that I said resonated with you on any level and you're like, oh my God, I just need to talk to Alyssa, the answer is yes, I would love to talk to you. I have no idea if we're going to work together and it doesn't fucking matter. I would love to talk to you, whether that's a networking call, a virtual coffee, or just, you know, I have space and time right now to just share my space and share my time. And
Amazing.
so I would love to receive any of you who feel called to reach out. And it's a genuine invitation.
Yes, I can tell and I can feel that. That's beautiful.
All right,
Oh,
let's just do
so
a little
much.
bit of a breath, Carey, so we can ground
Oh,
everything in. And I'm just I feel called to say a prayer. Thank you for this time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your commitment and willingness to receive from the two of us. Thank you, Carey, for this container. Thank you to Spirit and Source for providing the words and the teachings. Thank you for this time for all of us to share in this sacred teachings and this etheric temple in this moment.
thank you.
And I say amen. I grew up Catholic. I just say amen as my closure to prayers. If you say so mote it be, that's fine. If you say and so it is, that's fine. We're all spiritual traditions are equally welcome here. So
I
I
love
bless
it.
all of you. I love you all. Carey, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alyssa. I really appreciate you so much. Thank you for doing this.
You're so welcome. And we will stay in touch because you never know what's
Definitely.
going to go. All
Yeah.
right. Bye for now, everyone.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye.